Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant evening to you, wherever you may be. This is Comfortably Zone Radio, and you're listening to Dodgers Baseball, a tale of two cities, Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I'm your host, Peter V.Trunk, and my co-hosts are, as usual, Linda Wilson and Boathouse Bernie Rose. How are you, Linda?
Hey, doing well, thank you.
Okay, I know you listen. I know you're a big fan of the All-Star Game, and the All-Star Game was played in your backyard last night. Did you go to the game?
No, I didn't this year. You know, I went to the other two that were in San Diego, in 78.
Yeah, I know. I read that on your Facebook. Yeah, that's cool. I thought maybe you wangled the ticket somehow at the last minute.
No, I didn't.
I just want you to know that I did not. I'm proud to say I did not watch one pitch.
That's what.
And I also did not watch one pitch of the home run, whatever the hell they call it. That sub is.
Well, you know
and
what?
I'm going through withdrawal. I'm without baseball for 3 days. You know what I mean? I'm going through withdrawal. I can't wait for tomorrow.
I know. It'll be great.
Okay.
Forget tomorrow. It's Friday.
Friday, yeah.
Well, there's nothing tomorrow either.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, well. Okay,
well,
Bernie, how you doing?
We're just fine. Ready to go.
You're ready to go? Okay. Linda, you have anything to
go
add
on
about
with the
your
show. I'm not leaving.
All-Stars?
Yeah, all I was going to say was that I'm not really that big fan of the All-Star Game as much as I used to be, because back when it had some mystique to it, it was before interleague play. It was a lot more fun to watch and to see the different matchups that you wouldn't see. But
they would kill each other to score a run back in the day. Now everybody's hugging each other, kissing each other. How's your family?
Every
year,
it's
like a softball game in the park.
We're all millionaires now.
Every year there's a send-off for somebody. Jeter, Mariano, and now it's Big Papi.
Yeah.
It's got to be send-off. So anyway, I'm not as big a fan of it as I used to be, but it's still, it's still fun especially when it's right there in your city. So anyway,
we'll let you go. We'll let you go. We won't touch you up anymore.
Okay.
Tonight we're going to talk in on our show, Brooklyn to Los Angeles, Tale of Two Cities. We're going to talk about a fellow who played right field for the Brooklyn and Los Angeles Dodgers named Carl Furillo. Carl Furillo was born in Pennsylvania in 1922. He died at a very early age 66, in the same town, Stony Creek Mills, Pennsylvania, that he was born in. And Carl wore number 6. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Remind me about wearing number 6. And he had a couple of nicknames. One was Skoonj, which was short for Skoonj, which was some say was his favorite Italian delicacy. But I say it's because he ran like he had 2 pianos on his back. He was as slow as a Skoonj. And the other, of course, was the Reading Rifle. Stony Creek Mills, as I understand it, was and is, unless they gerrymandered it, very, very close to Reading, and they called him the Reading Rifle because he had the greatest arm in history in right field. And that's my opinion, along with a few dozen others that played along with him. He hit .299 lifetime. I think the only other guy that comes to mind right off the top of my head, without looking it up, and he also played right field, was a fellow named Al Kaline for the Detroit Tigers, who ended his career with 299 home runs. So 299 and 299, sort of like, I don't know, they go together in a way. Anyway, Furillo hit over 305 times in his career. He played from 46 to 60. He hit over 305 times. He won a batting title. Carl did in 1953. He hit 344. He led National League outfielders in assists for twice. He led the league twice, but he had 10 or more assists in 9 consecutive seasons. he also, I don't know if you ever heard this. Duke Snider told this story and opened up a whole can of worms a few years ago when the Duke was, of course, still alive. He said that he saw Carl Furillo throw two guys out at first base who had singled or thought they singled to right field. In other words, a batter hit a line drive to right field. Furillo picked it up on a bounce or two and threw to first base and got the guy out. So in your scorebooks, that would go 9-3, and it's not a base hit. He did that
I know
twice.
one of them was a pitcher. I don't know who the other one was, but yeah, he did.
One guy was Mel Queen. He was a pitcher, right? Exactly.
Right.
For the Pittsburgh Pirates. He also caught. I don't know how they kept statistics on this, but evidently they went back and did it. He caught 7 runners rounding first base after hitting a legitimate single. He threw behind them and caught 7 guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He wore number 6. I want to get this off my chest because it bothers me. I don't like the fact that the Dodgers do not retire their numbers unless the guy makes the Hall of Fame. The only guy they retired was the fellow we spoke about last week, Junior Gilliam, number 19. They retired his number. In fact, they retired it not 24 hours after he passed away.
Right.
All the other Dodger numbers are Hall of Fame guys, not Dodger Hall of Famers. Hall of Fame, Cooperstown Hall of Fame guys. Right. If anybody needed their number retired, of course, I would say Hodges would be first on the list. Number 14, no one, Mike Scioscia or whomever else you can remember, never should have worn number 14. 14 was Gil Hodges, first, last, and always with the Dodgers. And number 6, for so many years, 1946 to 1960, Carl Furillo, he was the epitome of a Dodger ballplayer. He was a hard-nosed, blue-collar guy. I have nothing against Steve Garvey, but Steve Garvey should have been number 7 or number 5 or something like that. They definitely should have retired Carl Furillo's number. That's an opinion. That's my strong opinion on that. But I just,
Are you telling me that Kike Hernandez doesn't deserve to wear 14?
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
You know what? This is one area in which I disagree, and only because they made that one exception with retiring number 19. Okay, and that opened the door for everything else. Everybody says, well, if they're going to do that, well, why didn't they retire this or that? I've heard arguments for a good 10 or 15 players whose numbers people think should be retired because they were such Dodger legends. But, eventually they'd have to go to wearing triple digits. So.
Well, that's not the case. That's not the case with the Yankees. Almost every number in the world is retired for them.
But if you heard how many arguments I've heard everybody's got their reason that they think their player should have the number retired. I kind of like the fact that they hold them to such high standards that you really do have to be the best of the best to have your number retired. And I'll tell you what, the city I live in San Diego, it's not that way because they retire numbers for people who just had players that just had a great moment with the Padres,
Yeah.
First Cy Young award winner, his career record is sub 500, but his number's retired because he was the first Cy Young award winner with the Padres. So I kind of like, and I tell Padre fans a lot. I said, if you have really high standards, you don't have to go around retiring all these numbers. So, legitimately, Gwynn and Winfield would be the ones that have their numbers retired, but they've got other ones. And, I'm okay with the Dodgers not doing that, and I don't think they should have ever made that exception. It was an emotional reaction to Gillian's death, and because of making that exception, everybody has to jump in with all the further exceptions, I should think.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my thoughts.
You know, I gotta chime in, I guess. I never really thought about it all that much, but besides, you know, Tony Gwynn, maybe, and, you know, talk about Randy Jones, what have the Padres had to even retire?
Well,
they've had nobody. They have no history. They've never won a World Series. They're the San Diego Padres.
Right.
And the Dodgers are, I'm not going to call them the Yankees. You know, they lost too many World Series for that. But as far as, you know, with names, you know, the Dodgers are right up there. And they've had just some great players, and that's why we're here. We're Brooklyn, Los Angeles, Dodger baseball. And I could see that they could have, or perhaps, like Peter says, they should have. But, boy, they've had some great names, and we're talking about some of these guys here from Brooklyn. And before we went on the air, we talked about how Linda and I are a little too young to, and that you, Peter, remember more because you're just a few years older. But it's amazing that the names, because I'm old enough to remember all the names. Even like I mentioned before, I went to Ebbetsfield once, but I can't remember it because I was so young. But I know all the names, and a lot of those names were still in L.A. when they moved, and I followed them. And now that we're getting into all this, it's kind of neat going back because I haven't done that in all these years, and looking at a lot of the things that they did and what they accomplished. And even though they made a ton of World Series between 47 and when they left, they only managed to win one of them. But boy, they had some great players. And of course, afterwards in L.A., they had some great players.
Absolutely.
You know, and guys had good careers. I'm not going to say, you know, Ron Say's number should be retired, you know, even though he had a good L.A. career. But there have been guys, you know, who we certainly could have. What about Fernando? Wouldn't you retire Fernando's number?
Well, that's one of the arguments that people use. Yeah, Fernando. They should retire Don Newcomb's number, and the list goes on. You know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. I mean, it's just that the impact of Fernando, boy, that was just, and it maybe wasn't the longest career, but boy, it was a great short career while it was going on. Actually, he hung around longer than you think, but
you know. Well, you could overdo it either way. You could overdo it either way. You could retire almost every number. If a guy had one sensational season, you could retire his number, which I think is foolish. But we're not talking about that with Furillo. Furillo had 50 years with the Dodgers. You know what I mean? Like he had like a real solid, amazing career. It's not like he was like he won one batting title and then he disappeared. No, that wasn't called Furillo.
No, his 344 average was the highest by a right-handed hitter, you know, since this guy in 1894, you know, hit 354. That 344 average until Tommy Davis broke it in 62. That's big. You know, that's, you know, and he had in a short time, he put a lot together, which, we'll get into it, which leads to the unusual ending that he had with the Dodgers. It kind of really, it really showed the difference of how it was back then and to how it changed. It's not even going to compare it to the way it is now with all the money. But obviously, once free agency hit, and even before then, they were making a little bit of money. But you remember when Koufax and Drysdale held out?
Yes. That was
and all they could get was 125. Instead of 100. And then, you know, once Messersmith and the whole thing with free agency happened, and the salary started going up and up and up, but now it's totally ridiculous. But he had to, the Dodgers cut him while he was out with a torn muscle. He had a torn calf muscle in 1960, and they cut him. And he sued the team because he claimed, in a few months, he would have gotten his 15 years in, and that's a higher pension and more medical expenses. And all he collected from that suit was $21,000.
Well, that was the remainder of his. That was the remainder of his salary when he tore his calf muscle. Yeah, when he tore his calf muscle in May of 1960, he had earned $12,000 of his $33,000 contract, and so he sued for the remainder of his contract. You mentioned that the Dodgers cut him so they wouldn't have to pay him the extra pension money, which seems kind of weird because the Dodgers themselves don't pay the pension. MLB pays the pension. And you know what the difference was?
Claim. Yeah,
you know what the difference was, Bernie? You know what the difference was?
Tell me.
The difference was between if they had let him stay to finish his 15th season, he would have collected the princely sum of $288 a month.
Really?
And as it turned out, he collected $255 a month. So it was a difference of like $30 a month.
Well, I'm just looking at some stuff that I looked up, and I remembered hearing about that a long time ago.
Sure. Well, he only had an
really
8th grade education. Carl only had an 8th grade education. In fact, that's what he was a backward type of guy. He wasn't.
Right.
He was socially awkward. He rarely socialized with the rest of his teammates because he felt like he wasn't up to snuff.
I read that.
So
the guys that were better educated, he was staying away from. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, he did what he thought he had to do. He sued, and I hate
He also
to say
claimed
this,
that he was blackballed as a result.
Right. Well, Walter OMalley blackballed him because after he retired, he tried every single team in the major leagues to get a job anywhere in the system of any of the other major league teams, and every single one of them told him no. So we can very easily assume that Walter OMalley was the one who made those phone calls and said, he sued me, don't hire him. Because OMalley in those days, whether you want to admit it or not, OMalley was the real commissioner of baseball back then. He told the other owners what to do, and they all followed him along like puppy dogs.
Sure.
And he was the man. He was the man. And he blackballed Furillo. Furillo went on to become, he ran a delicatessen in Queens in the 1960s. He was part owner. And then he installed elevator doors in the World Trade Center.
Right. I read that.
Yeah. And he worked as a night watchman before he got leukemia. He developed leukemia. He moved out of Queens. He moved back to Pennsylvania to his hometown, and he died there of what they consider to be a heart attack. I'm not so sure about that. I don't know. Probably was. But it was a sad ending for Carl Furillo because, no old-timers days, no working in the, what do you call that camp down at Vero Beach where the old-timers go. He didn't get any jobs.
Yeah.
He didn't get any jobs.
Yeah, it was very sad when I was reading that.
He sued for that $21,000.
Because I got to tell you, my memories was that Furillo was a big name in Brooklyn. Big name. And even when he went out to L.A., he was a big name. And
he was huge in Brooklyn because of the Italians. They loved him. They absolutely loved Carl Furillo. He was huge. And they also loved him for a few other reasons. One of them was that he had this running feud with Leo Durocher. Leo Durocher, who had become the hated New York Giants manager. And Furillo and Leo had a couple of real altercations. I mean, on the
field,
absolutely on the field, and that's when Ruben Gomez, through no fault of his own, stepped on Carl's hand and broke his broke his hand, and he was out of commission for a long time. You see a lot of pictures of Carl Furillo in Yankee Stadium doing the warm-ups to the World Series, and he's got like a bandage on his hand. If you ever noticed that, there's a million pictures of him like that. That's because he had just broken the knuckle on his little finger through his fight with Leo Durocher. One more thing, the reason why Durocher didn't like him was in his rookie year down in spring training, the Dodger players were playing poker one night, and they were drinking beers, and all the empty bottles of beer were all over the table and stuff like that. And a few of the guys, 2 or 3 of them, had gotten up to go to the men's room when Durocher came in, and he saw Furillo sitting at the table with like 20 bottles of beer in front of him. And he just, right away, Leo, right away, Leo puts him down as a drinker, which he was not. Furillo didn't smoke and didn't really drink that much. And he got off on the wrong foot with Durocher. And Durocher always had it in for him. He's a drinker. He's no good. He's cocky. He's a rookie. What's he doing drinking that much? He should take a back seat and all that stuff. And that's exactly what Furillo actually did. He was a very quiet guy. He didn't say too much. The most ominous thing that Furillo probably said was one of the sports writers in 47 when Jackie was coming up, Billy Cox had a problem, a big, big problem, because he knew that when Robinson was coming up, that the infield was going to shift and that Cox was going to be out of a job. He didn't want to lose his job, and especially to a black guy, God forbid. And Furillo, a sports writer asked Furillo, what would you do if a guy came in and took over your job? Try to take over your job. And Furillo said, you got to excuse my language here. He said, I'd cut his effing legs off. Now, it got around to everybody that he was talking about Jackie Robinson. But he wasn't. He was just talking about the general guy that would try to take his job away from him. Yeah. So he got a lot of bad. I'm not gonna say press, because back in those days they didn't really write it in a newspaper. But around the clubhouses and stuff, Furillo had a reputation. It wasn't a very good reputation. Then, of course, I can't let this go by, because 8 million people that listen to our show, I think it's 7 million. 7 million people that tune into this show are all going to be scratching their heads going, well, why didn't Peter Trunk bring up the Dixie Walker list of the Dodgers? The Dodgers started a petition that they didn't want to play with a black guy. And everybody was signing it and stuff like that. Now, there's 3 different rumors. The first rumor was there never was one, that was horse manure. There never really was one. The second one was that Furillo refused to sign it. The third one was that Furillo signed it. And then when he was called on the carpet for it with Branch Rickey, he said, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I have no problem playing with him. If I had it to do all over again, I never would have signed it. So you take your pick of one of those 3 stories, and that's the story of Carl Furillo with Jackie Robinson. But Carl Furillo's best friend on the team was Roy Campanella. So that speaks volumes that he wasn't a bigot. I'll just open the floor to you, Bernie. You could add whatever you want to add about Mr. Furillo.
Well, other than, the sad ending, he had some great, he was in 7 World Series with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And as you remember, most of them against the Yankees. 6 of the 7 were against the Yankees. So really all of them, because the last one was the 59 series, and he only played a little bit that year. But anyway, he had some good World Series action. He batted .353 in the first one in 47, even though they lost in 7 games. He helped preserve a 6-5 victory in the Game 5 1952 World Series with a spectacular catch over the fence.
Yeah,
of
you can see that on YouTube.
Home run by Johnny Mize.
Yeah, you can watch that on YouTube. That was a hell of a catch.
Yeah. And he hit .333 in the 53 World Series, and driving in the tying run in the 7th inning of Game 1. Although they went up to lose that game, but
I don't know if you're aware of this, but in 1946 the Dodgers finished first in a tie with the Cardinals.
Right.
They lost the playoff.
Right.
In 1959, they finished in a tie with Milwaukee. They had to beat Milwaukee to get into the World Series. And Furillo's single won the game that they had to win to get in. He hit a ground ball single. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken. I think they won that game 1-0, and his RBI single was the difference in that game.
Oh, the Braves.
The Dodgers.
Yeah,
the Braves had a hell of a team. So did Cincinnati back then. But the Dodgers won in 41. They came close in 42. They tied in 46. They won in 47. They won in 49. They lost in the 10th inning of the last game in 50. We all know about Bobby Thompson in 51. They won in 52. They won in 53. They won in 55. They won in 56. I mean, they were a couple of bounces here and there of winning every single year, just like the Yankees.
Yeah.
And so many of those World Series, the Yankees went 7 games. They just couldn't get over the hump.
Mm-hmm.
That's why 1955 was so glorious,
Yeah.
And I don't know that I can remember it. Somehow, some way in the back of my mind, I could almost see and hear people celebrating, but I was 4 years old. So like I said before, I remember more about the hatred when they left town, but I was a little bit older.
I've been hearing about that all my life, about that hatred.
And you'll continue to hear about it.
Yes, I do. Even more so.
If you and I remain friends, Linda, you'll hear about it until the day I die.
I'm sure I will. I'll tell you, ever since the internet started, I mean, it just like you hear it so much more. It used to be that I'd hear it here and there, from people, but you hear it online.
You know something, Linda? I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you the way I see it. It seems to me that this is a fact. When you see people online, whether it's on a Facebook page of Brooklyn Dodger Nostalgia or Brooklyn Dodger Memories or Ebbets Field Memories or all of those pages, I belong to all. Whenever you see somebody post, it was Robert Wagner's fault, the mayor, or it was Robert Moses' fault.
Right.
It wasn't. Those are the people that are like 48, 42, 41 years old. You never hear a 68 or a 72-year-old guy say, "Oh yeah, it was Robert Moses' fault."
Well, I actually have heard some older people say that. Believe it or not.
I never in my life have experienced that. I have never come across, whether it's in real life or on the internet, I have never come across an older guy or a gal like myself that doesn't blame 100%
I'm sure
on Walter OMalley. They blame him and him alone. And in fact they scoff, as I do, they scoff at the revisionists. It was Robert Wagner's fault. It was Rockefeller's fault. It was
Some people tell me that the revisionist is that it was all on OMalley because he wanted to keep the team in Brooklyn.
Well,
so if he wanted to keep the team in Brooklyn, why didn't they give him what he wanted? If it was today, if it was 2016, they'd give it.
It was against the law. It was against the law what he wanted. He wanted what the National Basketball Association Brooklyn Nets got at Barclays Center.
Barclays Center, right.
That's the exact
location
that O'Malley wanted. And in order for him to get it, the land would have had to been condemned. And the person who could have done that would have been Robert Moses. And he said no. He refused to do it.
That is correct.
Now, and finally, all these years later, they got that land condemned. I'm sorry?
Why did he refuse to?
First of all, he wasn't a baseball fan. He wasn't a Dodgers fan. He wasn't an O'Malley fan. He was one of these guys, and I brought this up 5 weeks ago. He was like the poor man's Donald Trump. He wanted his name on all the highways, all of the expressways, all of the tunnels, all of the bridges. He wanted to see, like color TV was coming in at the time. He knew the automobile was the future. And
got the causeway named after him. He got the beach named after him. He got all his stuff named after him.
Right.
You're 100% correct.
And
he was an egomaniac.
That's why he did that. You know what? The Dodgers would be moving, or probably in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, they would have been moving into their brand new stadium in Brooklyn, like 2 or 3 years ago. They would have gotten a new stadium in '58, and that would have lasted to about, another 50 years or whatever. And in about 2008, they would have built another one in the parking lot, like the Mets did at Shea. They built another one in the parking lot, and they'd have their brand new one. And they would always have been the Brooklyn Dodgers. And they wouldn't give a rat's ass about the Minneapolis Giants, who would have been playing in Minneapolis. And the Los Angeles Angels would be your favorite team, Linda. And that's the way it would have been. And that's the way it should have been.
Well, why would you not give a rat's ass about your arch rival, the Giants?
Well, because how can you have an arch rival between Brooklyn and Minneapolis?
Yeah, it would have. It would have
never would have happened.
You know what? I know that would take away the great rivalry of the game. So it's a good thing that didn't happen.
Oh boy, I'm not buying that one.
Well, I am. I mean, look at how much that rivalry has brought to baseball over the years. Not just in New York, but in California as well. So much history.
Wonderful.
And if the Dodgers want to go to playoffs this year or finish first, they got to do it on their own because the Giants are not losing to anybody.
Yeah, I guess.
Not their year.
Have to take it to them. No, it's not. Keep saying it.
We'll keep that little esoteric secret between the three of us, amongst the three of us. Oh, my Papa's rolling in his grave. I said between the three of us. It's amongst the three of us. Sorry about that.
Right.
Anybody want to say anything else about Carl Furillo, or you just want to talk about the Los Angeles Dodgers?
Well, yeah, I don't have much to say about Furillo. I've enjoyed listening to what you guys have to say, but because he retired when I was a mere infant, I didn't know much about him other than, in the past, other than what I've heard about him in the past, but nothing that was current time. So thanks, guys.
He didn't
Very good.
He didn't take many pitches. In fact, my father used to say, he's already swinging as he's walking from the on-deck circle. Furillo. He didn't take many pitches, and he also was very, very slow afoot.
Oh, that's why he got the Skoonj, right? Yeah. That's where that reference came from.
Well, a lot of people say he liked to eat Skoonj, so that was his favorite food, blah, blah, blah. I say it was because he ran like one. But anyway, the brilliant, and I use this term with tongue firmly in cheek, the brilliant Charlie Dressen for the entire 51 season led Furillo off, batted him number one in the lineup. A guy who never took a pitch and couldn't run.
Amazing.
But he was the leadoff hitter. He drove in 90-something runs from the leadoff position, by the way. Of course, the Dodgers scored about 900 runs. That's why. But Furillo was a great right fielder. He played the right field wall at Ebbets Field like a magician. He knew that if the ball was hit high and it was going to hit the fence, the fence in the wall in Ebbets Field was 38 feet high. It was 19 feet on the bottom, made up of concrete, and then 19 feet on the top, which also was in play, was made out of chicken wire. And Furillo knew that when the ball was hit, he knew right away if it was going to hit the chicken wire. And if it was going to hit the chicken wire, he would turn and run like hell towards the wall because the ball would hit the chicken wire and fall straight down.
Come down, right.
But if it's going to hit underneath it, going to hit the concrete, he would run towards the infield and play the carom, which shot off it like a rifle shot. And people would going, wow, this guy plays the Green Monster in Boston so well. Hell, anybody could learn how to play that in a week. You could never learn how to play the right field wall in Ebbets Field. You had to be a magician, and that's what Carl Furillo was. He was a magician. He was a great, great right fielder. He had a great arm. Back then they didn't give gold gloves. He would have won them every year. And he hit close to 300 every year, as evidenced by his lifetime average of 299. He was just a hell of a ball player.
If he would have had one more hit in his career, he statistically would have had a 300 lifetime batting average.
No
one more hit.
How about that?
Or one less at bat.
Well, there you go. He had over 1,000 RBIs. He had 1058 RBIs. He had almost 900 runs scored, 895, and he was a little short of 2,000 hits, 1,910.
Yeah.
But he had a 355 on base percentage and a 458 slugging. He 514 walks, so he had a hell of a career.
He did. He had a great career. He was a great ball player. I'm telling you, he used to say to people, "Oh, you never heard of me? You heard of Snider, you heard of Hodges, you heard of Campanella, you heard of Robinson, you heard of Reese.
Right.
You never heard of me?" He goes, ask the old timers. They'll tell you I could play some ball. And that's what he used to say. And boy, you get yourself a cup of coffee, sit in front of your screen of your PC, and just look at his lifetime average, and all his whole career, and you'd be amazed. He really was not what a lot of people think. Oh, he hit like 7 home runs and hit 250. No. He hit like 19 or 20 home runs and hit 300. And he drove in 90 or more runs all the time. The guy was really, really good. He really was.
Yep.
Well,
very underrated.
But yeah, one of the things that's always impressed me about him just is from hearing the stories that Ben Scully tells and how much respect Ben had for him. So I think we know that he was a great player even if we didn't see him play.
Absolutely.
Just because we have that story in there telling us.
Yeah. I get it. Well,
absolutely.
Anybody want to add anything else? We've come to the end of a show. Anybody want to add
got
anything?
it covered.
I got something to add. Furillo served in the armed forces during World War II.
Yes.
And he was wounded. He turned down, he won 3 battle stars. He turned down the Purple Heart. He told the general that he, Furillo, hadn't been sufficiently valiant enough. And he turned down the Purple Heart. How's that? How do you like that?
That's something. That is something.
Huh?
That's a hell of a thing.
You like that? You have a chance to get the Purple Heart, and you tell the guy, I was not sufficiently valiant. I don't deserve it. And handed it back to the guy. Think about that.
What they say, the greatest Jefferson, This
guy was a hell of a guy, boy. A hell of a guy.
A lot of
anyway,
those guys,
I'm glad I remembered to put that into the show. Call for a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great job, everybody.
Well,
that was interesting.
Great job, everybody. Thank you for your input. I appreciate it very much. And we'll talk. We'll talk via message on who we'll talk about next week.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
I have some ideas, but I hesitate to put it out there on the air. We'll have to decide amongst ourselves. Okay? You all have a great night. Thank you very much for your contributions.
You too.
Okay, thank
Bye-bye.
you. Have a great night.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.